Today, we will go through some of the most shocking cases where corrupt cops misused their authority and were eventually sentenced to life in court, starting with this monster of an officer who did the unthinkable while on duty.
Defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible and punishment is set at 16 years.
Cops often make serious mistakes, but they must be held accountable. Today, we will cover the story of a heinous officer who made the biggest mistake imaginable and did the unthinkable. Fortunately, he was held accountable, so make sure to watch how his case progressed. On June 18th, 2014, Officer Daniel Holtzclaw was heading home after his shift with his CAD and GPS turned off. That is when he spotted 57-year-old Janie Liggins and decided to pull her over. What he did next was horrific, as he forced her to perform oral sex on him after stripping. The brave woman went over to the police department the next day, and as the corrupt officer arrived for his shift, he was welcomed by a couple of detectives.
Okay, tell me about that stop.
I was going westbound on Northeast 50th, probably a block just east of Lincoln. I see a red Grand Prix or Grand Am in my right lane, in the outside lane. I'm in the inside lane. The car swerves, and so at the time I'm thinking, okay, it's probably a drunk person, or maybe he got excited because they saw a cop. And then made contact. It was a black female. Asked for license and insurance. Stated that she didn't have insurance. Gave me an ID.
Do you make traffic stops normally after work?
I don't, but in that case, I saw her swerve and whatnot, so
I mean, me, I don't.
Felt.
After I get off work.
I know. I mean, people, cops say that is have a.
Detective Kim Davis was the one leading the interrogation from the front and came straight to the issue at hand.
Okay, so you got her out of the car?
Yes.
Okay. And put her in the back of your car?
Yes.
Okay. Any problems there?
No, she was cooperative. Didn't give me any problems or whatnot.
Did you run her on your MDT?
No, I didn't. All my stuff as far as that, because I didn't even call it in and say it was a traffic stop. My computer was off and everything as well.
Did you shut it off?
I just shut it off.
Work?
Yeah, on the way.
When you put her in your car, did you pat search her?
When I came here, I was like, lift up your shirt. Is there anything on you? Anything as far as your waistband or anything like that? She said no. And then I put her in the vehicle and went from there. Asked her everything.
Did your hands go on her at all?
I backhanded her on as far as the side.
Where on her body? Tell me. You backhanded?
Her waist, and the back portion. I didn't touch her butt or anything, but the back portion of the waist. And then she lifted it up like right here, and there's nothing.
Did she lift it up like this?
No.
Okay. So she never, like, went, ooh, nothing,
No.
exposed her breasts or anything like that?
She asked me if I was like, no, it's okay.
She asked you?
Despite the shocking allegations being thrown at him, Officer Holtzclaw remained calm and cordial. However, he had no clue how he was about to be exposed.
So I was saying it was the hip, the side, not the butt section.
What about right here?
No.
You didn't?
No, I didn't.
They can tuck a gun
That's
right here.
why I asked to lift it up.
Oh, so she just kind of showed you her belly?
Right.
Okay.
What did she say?
Well, was there anything, an accidental touch, anything?
If she thought it, when I pat searched her, but it was nothing as far as I felt like I would do anything as far as sex. For my safety, I just checked to see the weapons or anything.
And
to make clear, I didn't touch her butt, but the waist side and whatnot. If you would like me to do it for me to show you.
No, and I'm fine with it, and you have every right to do that. Right. She's saying that you made her lift up her shirt, and when she lifted up her shirt, she exposed her breasts.
No.
Later, after a thorough investigation, it was found out that this was not the first victim of this corrupt officer. In fact, he had sexually assaulted multiple African-American women in the last year.
She said, she said she was doing this. When you said, is there anything inside your bra? And she was going, no, I don't have anything like that. Did she do that?
Yeah, she did, but I didn't look or anything like that.
Right.
And then she was like, do you want me to show you? I was like, no.
She said when she said, do you want me to show you? You said, yeah, and she went, woo.
No, I didn't.
But could she have been, woo, flashing you? And now you don't want to tell me because you're afraid you're going to get in trouble?
No, when I told her no, I said no.
Then she didn't go, yeah, no. Because sometimes drunk girls are
having a good time.
Yeah, but I'm asking you if she flashed you anyways.
I didn't see her. I didn't see her
no
breasts.
boobies?
I didn't see her breasts.
Okay. What about pants?
Nothing in her pants as far as I can see. She was wearing tight jeans. So
She said she pulled them down.
I didn't see it.
You didn't see her pulling them
I
down?
didn't see her pulling down pants.
You did not see her?
No, I did not see her breasts.
She's saying you shined your light on her.
I did not see her.
Where do you keep your flashlight?
The west side right here. Right.
Thankfully, Janie Liggins came forward and exposed the predator in uniform. Shortly after, Detective Gregory collected a buckle swab for Holtzclaw's DNA, evidence that would later be crucial.
Did we buckle swab anybody in the academy?
I don't.
As a demonstration?
No, I never had this done. So.
Stay up. There we go. And you get a free teeth cleaning with your first time.
You won't go none though.
All right, and then we're gonna have one more round.
I turned off my phone.
Okay, we pulled up a lot of video around that area after these allegations.
Okay.
Okay. She also had a SANE exam, which you know what that consists of.
Right.
There's a reason why we wanted your buckles.
Okay.
So if we go off the video and watch that,
Right.
you're still going to stick with your story.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall putting your penis in her mouth?
I don't.
Would you recall that if you did it?
If I did, yeah.
Although Holtzclaw's body cam and GPS were turned off, the detectives had found some CCTV footage of the incident. Nothing could necessarily be seen on that, but it did prove that the officer's vehicle was stopped there for 25 minutes.
We knew you were on that stop.
Right.
We knew you were there. And we can watch a whole lot of actions being performed while you were there. Okay? And that's why she was trying to give you every out on the whole booby thing. But any reason why your would be out?
No.
We didn't do it, we didn't do it, we didn't do it. And then the DNA comes back and says, he did it. Then we have a huge problem.
Right.
Okay. On the video, are we going to see her boobies?
Shouldn't see her.
Okay. Are we going to see her pull her pants down?
I didn't see her pull her pants.
Okay. Are we going to see your penis?
Nope.
Are we going to see your penis go in her mouth?
No.
Are we going to get any DNA to that?
No.
The detectives also discovered that 43-year-old Terry Morris had complained about Officer Holtzclaw a month ago, that he had pulled her over for a traffic stop and then later raped.
Probably not necessarily going to remember the name, but her name is Terry Morris. Okay, black female. Supposedly you promised her a ride to the city rescue mission. This ring a bell?
No.
She thought you ran her for warrants. With the clicking, drove her around. No.
Her name doesn't. I don't recall a name like that.
And she's claiming the same thing. The exact same thing. And here again, for whatever reason, things are pointing at you again. Traffic stop, not logged in, all that stuff.
The other girl that he's talking about is kind of making the same allegations, and that's weird.
Yeah, that's
Doesn't look good.
I mean, that's
it doesn't
weird.
look. Yeah, it
That's
doesn't look
weird.
good. So, no, I don't.
Officer Holtzclaw was showing no signs of concern on his face, but it was clear that something was deeply wrong. The fact that so many underprivileged black women came forward with the same complaint was no coincidence.
Are you circumcised?
I am circumcised.
Just asking. Do you have pubic hair?
Yes.
Well, I mean, some people manscape, as you call it.
Right.
You groom?
I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
So do I. For you.
You got any identifying marks around your?
I don't.
Just a plain old penis, huh?
Plain old penis.
Plain old 14-incher.
I don't know what to say about that, but
See, you should have. You just had your opportunity. I just don't know what to think. Would you take a polygraph?
yeah, if you want me to take a polygraph.
I mean, I'm trying to think of a solution. Do you know how slow DNA is?
I don't. I do not.
Slow.
You went home? Was anybody home?
My girlfriend was home.
Do
you
you
get
live
laid?
with her?
Huh? No, she doesn't. She just stayed.
Did you get laid?
Messed around, yeah.
What's messed around?
I guess
We were all adults.
we almost had, and she was tired.
What'd you do?
So my and then maybe went a little bit in, and then she pushed me off and said, "No, we don't want to. I'm tired." I was like, "Okay."
That's kind of mean to let it get that far and then stop.
So that's when you got home?
That's when I got home.
After asking a few questions about Holtzclaw's personal life and marriage, she shifted back to the case, this time with some more direct questions.
And she's sitting right here. If she goes like this, well, she's going to be looking right at your penis.
Okay. But it was just talking.
Let me ask you this, did you ever get a hard-on while you were talking to her? Because she could have...
I don't think
these
I got...
pants don't fit the greatest,
Right.
and if you get a hard-on, I'm going to be able to tell you got a hard-on.
Right, and I'm pretty positive I didn't get a hard on.
Didn't get a hard-on when you... Did your pants come unzipped, unbuttoned, anything while you were standing right there?
No.
CSI is processing your car right now.
Right.
And when we stepped out, they found some pubic hairs right in here. Could they be yours?
No, that's not... I didn't do anything right there.
Did she?
No.
But do you think that could be?
No, it's not. No. Nothing of mine.
Your pubes couldn't be
No.
right there?
No.
Holtzclaw targeted African-American women with outstanding warrants, running background checks before stopping them. By the end of the week, his number of victims would rise to 8 as those poor women came forward.
You sure she just didn't flash you?
I can't... She did not flash. I want to say I can't recall, but I'm pretty positive she didn't
When I
flash
see
me.
a pair of titties,
She
see
went like
her.
this, but nothing as far as I'm going like crazy looking.
lifting the shirt.
No.
How far did she lift it?
When she lifted it up first, when I patted her down, she was like right here to like stomach line.
Did you see her belly?
Maybe some fat rolls or something, I don't know, but nothing
Right,
like
but I mean, could you
just-
see skin?
Yeah, I saw skin, yeah.
You like older women?
I don't.
How's
How's
your
She's 25.
Okay.
What's the oldest lady you've slept with?
Maybe 29.
You ever slept with a black woman?
I have. In high school, I have.
Okay.
Why would she make? Because when a woman says something like this, and they go through a sane exam, and they get, you didn't give her a ticket, so she's not getting out of a ticket. You didn't arrest her, because we get those when they go to jail. I've been have to work those stupid things because they think they're going to get out of jail.
One of the most devastating claims was made by a 17-year-old victim who claimed that the officer had raped her on her mother's porch.
Anyway, those pubes are going to be yours.
No, they're not. Please. Go.
I know. We're going to test it. It just takes.
They're not.
Anyway, your skin cells are going to be anywhere on her mouth.
No.
Skin cells from your fingers.
No.
Did you touch her body anywhere other than with the back of your hand, pat searching her?
I just passed her, and that was about it. Didn't touch her face or anything.
Because
Yeah.
if the tests come back, you ain't coming back in here.
Because we have a woman that says about, basically being assaulted,
Right.
okay? And
Right.
we're calling it by force and all that. Big difference between that and a hookup.
Right. Nothing else.
But when she was standing, did she try to pull her pants down?
No.
Did she do, you said she kind of did like
did
this.
this.
Did she ever do anything down here?
No.
You said you take the lie detector test.
Right.
Do you have any extra job? Is there a time when you can't take a lie detector test?
No.
You're saying about 15-minute traffic stop. How long do you usually take on traffic stop, just on average?
Maybe 20 minutes.
Testing later confirmed that her DNA was found on Holtzclaw's pants. Currently, the detectives remain focused on this single traffic stop. They continued asking more questions about it, but the officer never seemed to be in any doubt, as he was never under any kind of stress.
Now,
That's a long time.
Now, 20 minutes, and I'll give it to you. Just even doing the gang stuff and all that, okay. 20 minutes, now that's going to be some 800 time, right?
800, searching the car in detail, all of that.
Okay, so doing all of that, all the running, waiting in line, and even on a search. Now, the question I have is we got a lapse of time here, so I'm kind of get a better handle on where the time went. You're talking about 15 minutes, no 800, no running on the computer, you shut it down. And you said it was just a quick little search of the car. Where's the rest of that time?
Just talking to her.
About what?
Just see where you're going. Trying to get her to confess. Are you drunk or not? Like, are you been drinking? Because I could smell it when I was in the car, but I can't really get it.
Well, what if she said, yes, I'm drunk?
There are a lot of drunk questions, like how much
Have you been drinking? Mainly it's just have you been drinking, trying to get her confessed, see anything inside that juice, just trying to just talk to her. But
Okay, right there, those questions maybe took 40 seconds. 15 minutes?
And you said 5 at the car. So then we got 10 of a lot of questions.
Right.
Okay. I mean, you tell me I wasn't there. I mean, obviously I don't have any audio.
And that's what I'm saying. Roughly on a traffic stop take about 20 minutes.
The detectives still couldn't wrap their heads around the fact that Holtzclaw did not issue a ticket to the woman, and the stop still took 25 minutes.
How could you take 15 minutes on that?
Just talking. I must have been talking. So that's it.
I can't see her wanting to talk if she's crying and asking if you're going to shoot her and all this. I don't see her being real forthcoming with conversation.
Whether my questions or whatnot, that's it.
I mean, you don't seem... I mean, I don't know how you were out there, but just kind of talking with you. I mean, you seem real laid back and everything like that. I've never got the impression of just kind of an angry type cop. We know some.
So you don't think 15 minutes was too long on that traffic stop?
No,
And nothing went on during that 15 minutes?
nothing's.
Suddenly, Detective Davis called Holtzclaw's wife to confirm his earlier statement. Shockingly, he was caught lying immediately.
I just talked to Carrie.
Okay.
She said she was asleep when you got home and you did not try to have sex, and you did not have sex.
Did try to have sex.
She said you didn't. And I asked her, could you have been asleep? And you had kind of, no. And she said no. You did not try to have sex.
Because I don't want to involve her. I tried to have sex with her and she was asleep. Carrie goes to sleep pretty early, about 9, 10 at the late.
Okay, but she would know if you tried. I'm a woman.
I know.
And my husband comes home in the middle of the night and I'm like, are you kidding me? I've been asleep. You said you twirled around her vagina
I did.
and you put it in a little bit and then she said, I'm tired. No.
I did.
She would remember that to tell me.
Shoot. Maybe.
She said you did not try to have sex.
That was a disastrous start for Holtzclaw, as his claims were quickly proven false. With this, the detectives had every right to launch a full investigation, as things were unraveling for him.
I don't know what to say. I mean, because it just looks like I just caught you in a lie, and now I don't know what to believe.
I'm telling you.
I don't know what to believe.
Okay.
Because you tell me this, I go to verify it. She tells me the opposite, and now I'm wondering what you're telling the truth about.
Maybe because she doesn't know what the heck's going on.
No, she doesn't. I didn't tell her.
And I'm glad, but detectives calling her, any other officer asking her a question like that.
I know.
I'm telling you, I tried to have sex with Carrie, my girlfriend.
She is going to remember your weenie twirling around her hoo-ha. You remember that. I'm sorry, I don't care how much of a sleeper you are. You remember because it pisses you off in the middle of the night and you go, are you serious? Don't bother me with that.
Finally, the interrogation came to an end, and the detectives also took over Holtzclaw's uniform, which was sent over for DNA testing as well.
Looks like you're gonna need to, unless you want to keep the shirt on. I don't know. I don't know if this shirt's gonna be big enough for you. Here, there you go, boy. Was gonna get a Tyvek. Well, why don't you go ahead and get dressed then?
I need to tell you what's going on. It's crazy. I said, when I'm basically on my way home, and I'd like to talk to you. What's going on? It's crazy.
Officer Holtzclaw was placed on leave, and as investigations progressed with multiple women coming forward, he faced 36 charges of sexual battery, oral assault, and stalking from 8 different women.
Verdict, count 1, sexual battery. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn in the above entitled cause, do upon our oaths find as follows. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery and set punishment at 8 years. Count 2, procuring lewd exhibition. Not guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition. Defendant is not guilty of the crime of sexual battery. Count 8, defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible oral. Punishment is set at 20 years. Count 9, first degree. Defendant is not guilty of the crime of first degree.
Despite Holtzclaw's claim that the women were seeking monetary gain and trying to frame him, the jury unanimously found him guilty.
Count 16, forcible sodomy. Defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible sodomy and punishment is set at 16 years. Count 17, forcible sodomy. Defendant is not guilty of the crime of forcible oral sodomy. Count 18, procuring lewd exhibition. Defendant is not guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition. Count 28, the first degree. Defendant is guilty of the crime of first degree and punishment is set at 30 years. Count 29, first degree. Defendant is guilty of the crime of first degree and punishment is set at 30 years. Count 30, sexual battery. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery and punishment is set at 8 years. Count 31, second degree by instrumentation. Defendant is guilty of the crime of second degree and punishment is set at 12 years.
After listening to some last words from the judge, Holtzclaw left the courtroom in tears, still claiming that he did not do it.
Mr. Holtzclaw, this jury finds you guilty of the various counts. You will be remanded to the custody of the Oklahoma County Sheriff for formal sentencing set January 21st, 2016 at 10 o'clock a.m.
Your Honor, I'd ask to poll the jury.
All right, you have a seat.
Now, if you think that wasn't bad enough, this next psycho made the worst decision you could imagine.
The detective said, side chick, that's his baby mama. And there's a possibility that the boy is his son. I'm thinking we're supposed to be the good guys. He's supposed to be watching my back.
It is rare to see a police officer held accountable for their crime, but today we bring you some of the most shocking cases of corrupt officers who did the unthinkable and faced justice in court. Starting with a Border Patrol agent who made the most shocking decision of his life. On April 9th, 2018, Laredo police officers and Border Patrol agents were notified about a double homicide that had occurred in a park. The suspect was another Border Patrol agent, Ronald Burgos, who was in his car when the officer stopped him. It wasn't until 2023 that this case was on trial, and the first responders were telling what happened.
The person that was using that car at the time was supposed to meet a Border Patrol agent at the Father Magnoble Park.
Okay.
The transmission that came in was the boyfriend's name was Anthony Burgos.
Okay.
When the radio transmission came up for Anthony Burgos, there was only one Border Patrol agent that was at that location with us. I had just seen him. I had never seen this person before. I see him. He's right near the car, and so I wave him over. I say, "Hey, come here." As he's walking up to us, the name says Burgos. So we look at the name. I'm looking at the name as he's coming over, and I'm just like, "Hey, what?" I think this is the person they just called over the radio. but they said Anthony, and I look at the first name and it's an R.
Ronald Burgos had just committed the ultimate blunder, and he was about to be taken to the cleaners by his fellow Border Patrol agents who wouldn't fall for his bluff.
Tells him, hey, what's your name, man? And he says, Ronald Burgos. And we're looking for Anthony Burgos. And radio transmissions are coming through, and so it's kind of getting a little hectic. Burgos approaches closer to Reyes. I'm walking next to him. I'm the only uniformed officer. So I'm right next to him, and he says, hey man, what's your name? And then Burgos says, Ronald Burgos Aviles. He only uses his last names. So then Rick's like, what's your name, dude? Why are you not telling me your name? What's your name? And he says, my name's Ronald Burgos Aviles. And he says, you're not telling me your name. Do you have an ID or something? And he's like, no, I don't have an ID.
The Border Patrol agent had just arrived after murdering his ex-girlfriend, the mother of his child, Griselda Hernandez, and his 1-year-old baby, Dominic Hernandez. It was appalling to see how Burgos reacted after doing something as heinous as this.
Yes, so once I took the belt off, I put it behind his unit, and then I patted him down as the unit approached us. So I patted him down. I located a phone on him and a driver's license in his shirt pocket.
Okay, so, and what did you do with those 2 items?
I turned over the driver's license to Detective Reyes, and the cell phone, I put it with his property that I had already taken, which was his Sam Brown. I put it in the back of his truck.
The prosecutor moved forward to show the court the dash cam video of the arrest of the Border Patrol agent. As you can see, the corrupt officer had no remorse on his face.
What is it that he's doing in that scene?
He's wiping his arms. Looks like he's cleaning something off, or
What was it that he did right before he wiped his arms?
he licked his finger.
Officer Ronald Burgos was desperately wiping his arms and even sucking his fingers, trying to remove any trace of evidence. He had just used a knife to his ex-girlfriend and their young son, with the evidence plainly visible to everyone.
Come on, man. Oh yeah, he could have just told me straight up, man. So don't make him go forward. Embarrassing, big ordeal.
As the trial progressed, witnesses came forward, and amongst them was a key witness, another Border Patrol agent, Francisco Lara, who made a shocking revelation.
I look south and I see the silhouette of the young woman. So I completely forget about Mr. Burgos and I start running towards the victim.
See the victim?
As soon as I see the victim, I approach and I start yelling, like, "Señora, señora, despierta, estás despierta, ma'am, wake up." Because at this time, all I see is blood. I told my trainee, I call him Schmitty. I like, Schmitty, is that what I think I'm looking at? And I see the silhouette and I immediately start running towards her. And that's when I tell him, like, I start yelling at her, "Estás despierta, are you awake? Do you have any gloves?" He's like, "No, I do not." So I say, "I don't have any gloves." And I asked my trainee, Schmitty, "Do you have any gloves?" And thankfully, being the great agent that he was, he did have a pair of gloves.
Burgos had devised a strategy, as moments after his ex-wife and son, he ended up calling the cops, claiming that a murder had been committed. Officer Lara explains how he tried to con everyone.
And I immediately checked for a pulse. I don't feel a pulse. I look at my fingers and they're covered in blood because I checked her neck area. So I don't feel a pulse. So I immediately see her left wrist. It's facing up. I check her wrist and again I do not feel a pulse. Right away I tell Mr. Burgos, sir, I think she's 10-7, which means that she's dead. And he's like, yeah, it looks that way. So I'm radioing everything into our station and I'm letting him know what I'm seeing. At this time, he's standing there. Not really, the supervisor normally takes control of the situation and radios in everything to the station. Once again, he's quiet. I'm the one relaying everything that I'm seeing to the station. I'm processing everything in, I'm taking it in. And I'm telling them what I'm seeing. And right away, I start telling the camera operator to start scanning the river. I tell him, scan the river, see if you see anybody going back.
Burgos had used his police training, carry out the crime in a bushy area, where Griselda ended up having 27 stabs, and baby Dominic had received 2 as well.
Next to the victim, I check her. Mr. Burgos is standing over here too, I guess on the other side of her. So I tell him she's 10-7, which means she's dead. Radio everything in. I told base 2, I think she's dead. They tell me take a step back, trigger the crime scene. So before anything, I told my trainee, go to the gate and open it for the paramedics. He takes off. So before I take a step back, I'm surprised to see so much blood. So I grab my head and I'm like, where is all this blood coming from? I take a step back. At the time he picks her up, I could see the shadow of her face.
Officer Lara, a junior at the crime scene, could not believe his eyes as he watched his senior, Officer Burgos, handle the victim with shocking indifference and remained completely unfazed by the brutality of his action.
I get a phone call from my team leader. My team leader tells me, hey, we already activated the Border Patrol unions, the lawyers for you. Before you make any statements, we already got lawyers. And I'm like, we already made our official statement. He was surprised. He's like, oh, you did? I'm like, yes. He's like, before he hangs up, he's like, just so you know, there's a rumor saying that the dead woman is Burgos' side chick. I'm like, all right, 10-4, let me call you back.
It wasn't until detectives began investigating the murder that Officer Lara realized that the woman was Burgos' ex-girlfriend and the mother of his child. This revelation left him in a deeply emotional and shocked state.
We just heard her.
Going to question answer basis, Mr.
I'm good, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
That is exactly how everyone in the court felt, and we can only imagine the condition of Griselda's family. It turned out Burgos had committed this horrible act just because he was refusing to pay child support. Finally, after listening to hours of testimonies and getting evidence, the jury reached a verdict.
In cause number 2018 CRA 852D1, in the case of the state of Texas versus Ronald Anthony Burgos Aviles, the jury has returned a unanimous verdict. I'm about to read the verdict of this jury on punishment as to count number 1. Special issue number 1 on count 1. Whether there is a probability that the defendant, Ronald Anthony Burgos Aviles, would commit criminal acts of violence that would constitute a continuing threat to society. Answer, yes. Signed by the foreperson. Whether taking into consideration all the evidence, including the circumstances of the offense, the defendant's character and background, and the personal moral culpability of the defendant, there is a sufficient mitigating circumstance or circumstances to warrant that a sentence of life imprisonment without parole rather than a death sentence be imposed. Answer, yes. Signed by the foreperson of the jury.
The jury unanimously decided that Burgos would receive life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. Now, many might argue that the death sentence would have been a more fitting punishment for such a heinous crime.
You heard me announce the verdict of the jury with regard to both counts of this indictment. it is now my job to sentence you in accordance with that indictment, with that verdict. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
After being found guilty by this jury of 2 counts of capital murder, and after giving us the verdict that they have just announced, it is my job now to pronounce sentence. As to count 1 of capital murder, and as a result of the sentence of the verdict of the jury, you will be sentenced on count 1 as to capital murder to a term of life without the possibility of parole. As to count 2,
Burgos was immediately transferred to the jail and is guaranteed to die there. This shocking encounter truly left everyone speechless, and it is even more saddening that it took 5 years for justice to be delivered to the poor victim's family. Well, nothing might top the brutality shown by this officer, but this next tyrant made another huge mistake.
Nothing in his hands, and he was shot twice
In 2011, during a routine traffic stop, Officer Osvaldo Villareal fatally shot an unarmed Benny Herrera. The victim's family filed a lawsuit, but it took 5 years for the case to reach pretrial, as Villareal's attorney attempted to argue for qualified immunity.
It's a tragic case, there's no question about that. But Officer Villareal was required to make a split-second life and death decision.
What required him to do that? It doesn't look to me as though he was the initiator.
The fact that Mr. Herrera, first of all, he had been acting erratically before the shots were fired, moved from a place of relative safety on the shoulder of the road into the roadway. He was skipping.
But if we're talking about Officer Villareal, how much did he know about the prior behavior?
He saw all of that.
I have to say what you're saying is inconsistent with what I saw on his own camera. That is to say, the point at which he began to get close enough to see anything. Some of that earlier stuff was on the other camera, but not on his.
Officer Villareal had shot the poor suspect only a second after he asked him to take his hands out of his pocket. And sadly, the attorney was defending this monster.
All at one point, his camera was turned on, but he testified.
His camera was turned on well before he got to the scene.
He testified in deposition that he saw Mr. Herrera on the side of the road, and then he saw.
Well, he can testify to what he wants to testify to, but I want to tell you what I saw on his own camera tells me that the early part of this he did not see, could not see. That was his intention, you say?
That was his intention, and now, that's in his deposition.
Again, I'm relying on what's on the videotape, and now this is in Officer Villareal's car. I hear him say, "Take your hand out of your pocket," and I hear the gunshot almost simultaneously.
Exactly.
They cannot be separated by more than a second.
And that's exactly the time period when Officer Villareal had to make his decision.
Shockingly, even the police department cleared Officer Villareal's conduct, but the judge had another idea.
Here, Mr. Herrera was arguably complying with Officer Villareal's order to remove his hand from his pocket at the time that he was shot. So how is it that we determine that we should grant qualified immunity?
Because qualified immunity allows for police officers to make mistakes. It allows for the possibility that officers will make mistakes in judgment, and that's exactly what happened here. Officer Villareal had a choice to make. Do I wait and see whether there's something in the hand that could kill me, or do I shoot? And he made the decision to fire. We know with the benefit of hindsight, obviously, that was wrong.
The officer was about to face the consequences of his actions as the judge unanimously decided that his qualified immunity should be tossed.
As long as the historic facts are undisputed, the question of whether or not Officer Villareal's actions were reasonable is a question of law. It's not a question that you give to a jury, because we don't want juries second-guessing the very, very difficult life and death decisions that officers have to make.
I agree, but at this stage, again, this is not an argument to a jury. For us to even have jurisdiction over this case, we take those facts. Yes. You're saying that as a matter of law, the shooting here was legal.
Yes, it was objectively reasonable. Well, not just those facts. Officer Villareal knew that that Mr. Herrera was a suspect in a domestic violence incident.
Okay.
He knew that he had a gang affiliation, that he was on parole, that he had a warrant out for his arrest. All of those things factor into
on parole. I don't remember on parole. They said
on parole, yes, and there was a warrant out for his arrest.
What do we know about what Officer Villareal knew with respect to whether he was armed?
We know that dispatch told Officer Villareal and Officer Miali that Mr. Herrera was not known to be armed.
The attorney continued to make bizarre and illogical arguments, but the judges swiftly rejected them, firmly believing that the officer should at least stand trial for his actions.
no, sir. The suspect had refused to put up his hands, had threatened the officers, and an officer believed that she saw something in the suspect's hand, saw him move his arm, and was worried he was going to shoot her. But yet we affirmed the denial of qualified immunity in part because the suspect had not brandished a weapon or spoken of a weapon.
I do recall that case, Your Honor.
The domestic violence incident was over.
Yes, and there.
So, I mean, how does that strengthen your case? I mean, that was, if you're arguing that it was an ongoing domestic violence, so.
It wasn't an ongoing domestic violence incident, but he was warrant out for his arrest, that he had known gang affiliations, and all of those things factor into, am I afraid of this encounter, or do I think that this is going to be a perfectly safe encounter? And everything that they observed, or a lot of the things that they observed, heightened the situation to a point where it was objectively reasonable for the officers. Nobody disputes that, for example, that it wasn't objectively reasonable for the officers to have their guns out. They were going to do a felony stop. Domestic violence under California law is a felony. So they had their guns out. There's some question about whether or not there were other alternatives available. Well, in the split second that decision had to be made, you couldn't put the gun down and pick up a baton. You couldn't put the gun down and pick up a taser, assuming that Officer Villareal even had a taser. I think there's testimony in the record that he didn't have a taser available to him. He had to make a decision based solely on what he knew at the time. And it's easy for us to sit in hindsight and say, well, Mr. Herrera didn't have a gun. Mr. Herrera didn't really pose any
I don't think
threat.
anyone here said that one time.
No,
I think what we're focusing on, again, the narrow standard we have to deal with here. And that's what we're dealing with. This is not a jury trial. This is not summary judgment. It's a very limited thing. No one here has raised about the fact he didn't have a gun.
I understand. The trial court did.
The plaintiff's attorney stepped forward and presented compelling arguments that further solidified the need for the officer to face trial, strengthening the case against him.
And that the officers perceived a heavy object in that pocket. That's...
First part, yes. Second part, a little less clear. But I think there's no question that he had his hand in his pocket.
Well, and both officers said it looked like he had something heavy in his pocket.
Okay.
All right. And then just before Mr. Villareal opened fire, Mr. Herrera rapidly removed his hand and moved quickly, it seemed like, toward the officer's car. Why isn't that enough?
Well, because sticking on the undisputed facts, the officers had no information that any weapon was involved in a crime. They were specifically told he was not known to carry weapons. He had nothing in his hands, and he was shot twice and killed. We specifically asked the officers about their training, and they conceded, which is included in the cites in our brief, that deadly force is a last resort, only to be used in the direst of circumstances, only when no other reasonable measures are available. And
finally, the judges reached a conclusion and gave one last shut-up call to the defense attorney.
If everything goes bad for your client, that is to say, if we send it back, if the jury says no qualified immunity, and if the jury comes in with an award of some amount of damages, will your client pay those damages out of his own pocket, or will it be paid by his employer?
It should be 99.9% of the times it's paid by the employer. I don't see why it would be different.
Well, by statute, California statute says it's paid by the employer unless they're punitives.
Yes,
isn't that right?
That was what I was going to say.
So that doesn't say 99%, it says 100.
Well, I was going to say, unless there were punitive damages, the city would have the option of deciding whether to pay those punitives.
Moving on, this pathetic line cop was taken to the cleaners by this judge.
Then I want you taking him up on perjury.
Your Honor.
Will you take him up for perjury?
He admitted it was a mistake, Your Honor.
No, but he lied. He lied on a sworn
Absolutely
citation.
not, Your Honor.
Cops consider themselves untouchables as they go on arresting anyone they wish. They forget that they are only paid to enforce the law and are not above it. But today, we'll be going through these cases where evil cops were owned and humbled in courtrooms. Officer Michael Wagner had arrested defendant Lisette Gonzalez for a DU1. However, during court proceeding, it was revealed that he never administered a breathalyzer test, yet falsely recorded that she tested above the legal limit. When the judge learned of this, he responded in a way that had not been seen in courts before.
I want to be enlightened.
It was a mistake, admittedly, by Michael Wagner.
I know.
He testified to that today.
He caused her to have her driver's license suspended for at least a few months for nothing. So are you going to null process that case, or am I going to get mad at you today?
Perhaps you can get mad at me, Your Honor, but at this point...
Why wouldn't you? Wait a minute. Did you hear the uncontroverted testimony of this officer?
Your Honor.
Then I want you taking him up on perjury.
Your Honor.
Will you take him up for perjury?
He admitted it was a mistake, Your Honor.
No, but he lied. He lied on a sworn
Absolutely
citation.
not, Your Honor, and that is not true.
I'm dismissing. I am dismissing this charge. No, I'm dismissing the charge.
This action visibly angered the judge, and he would not stop here as he went on to grant more favors to the defendant.
This whole case was fishy, and I have no idea how they... You know what?
Their address on file.
You know what?
The state intends to amend
I'm
the
granting.
charge and proceed on
I'm rescinding the sentence. I'm granting the JOA.
You don't agree with the state's decision on
I'm
the
granting
other
the JOA in fairness.
In fairness, because you don't like the state's decision today, Your Honor, on the case?
No, you're not. Now that I consider what Officer Wagner testified to and how many times he basically tripped over himself just to arrest this lady with no real probable cause. You're done. Motion, the JOA is granted.
And you're not going to provide a written order on that?
Nope. You want to appeal me? No.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The case should have never been done. Never.
Thank you for letting us know that, Your Honor.
The judge not only reversed his decision, but acquitted the defendant on the spot, leaving the arresting officer and his attorney in dismay. Well, sometimes police officers do the unthinkable in courtrooms, costing their cities thousands of dollars. In a September 2012 hearing of an assault case, Judge Doris Bird laid out punishment for an assault Anthony Waller when a police officer decided to take matters into his own hands.
Investigation for false imprisonment, assault in the third degree, assault as a class 2 felony, and a misdemeanor charge as well in possession of drug paraphernalia.
I'd like to object first. If I'm under investigation, I thought the investigation came first, then the rest came. Hold on, man.
Get on your feet. Don't turn on me. Get on your feet.
Waller was only talking to the judge when Deputy Brady Lovevenier slammed him to the ground before taking him away. The suspect later claimed that he suffered broken teeth and head wounds. As a result, the deputy was suspended by the sheriff's office and ultimately resigned. On the other hand, Mr. Waller ended up getting $50,000 in damages from a federal jury. This officer lost his job for this. But what happened to this next bully in court will leave you all satisfied.
5 individuals claimed that this defendant tased them when they were not consenting to it, when they were not looking.
January 2023, Behar County Deputy Andrew Garcia was arrested for using his taser on cadets in training. Garcia was charged with 2 counts of official oppression, assault with bodily injury, and harassment. He pled guilty to the charges as Judge Boyd proceeded with the case.
You entered a plea to account for tampering with the government record. You entered a plea of guilty. The state waives counts 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. According to the plea bargaining agreement, punishment is to be assessed at 1 year in the state jail facility. The state recommends community supervision. They're opposing your application for deferred adjudication. Have both parties had a chance to review the PSI report state?
Yes, Judge. Yeah.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, I've gone over my client and given him a chance to read at his own pace.
It was Deputy Chavez.
No. Not in training, because you were not tasing people in training. I know that sometimes, and I don't know if it's still the case, I think it's not the case, they would tase officers in training so they would know this is the voltage of the taser, this is how it feels.
The state attorney explained what Deputy Garcia had actually done. The revelations will surely leave you in shock and dismay.
Yes, Judge. So this defendant took advantage of people who he was supposed to be supervising and training in the Bexar County Jail. He was the CERT deputy in charge of cadets and lockdown units with violent offenders, people with ag assaults, murder charges pending. At least 5 individuals claimed that this defendant tased them when they were not consenting to it, when they were not looking, and that he did it in front of inmates, which, jeopardizes the security of the jail and also does not help with the retention issues that the jail is having as well. At least 2 of the victims left after that they were tased because they didn't want to be part of that work environment. Some of them were tased on the arms, legs, back, stomach. Multiple people said they did not want to be tased. He did it anyways. There's evidence that after he tased them and that the victims would ask him, "Why'd you do that?" he would look at them and smile. Some of the people consented to being tased. However, it was under a type of duress. For example, one of the victims went to him asking for clippers so that they could cut the inmate's hair in another unit. And he said, "I'll give them to you if you let me tase you."
It's bizarre to hear that a law enforcement officer was being a straight-up bully and was harassing his juniors who were there for training. However, the events keep on getting worse.
In the PSI, I noticed that he said that he had been tased before. There's evidence that was uncovered throughout the investigation that he would, when the victims would say, "Hey man, why'd you do that to me? Have you ever been tased?" He would respond back with, "No, and I'm not going to let anyone tase me." So I don't know which part of that is actually true. I just want to make it very clear that when these reports come out and when all this stuff is happening, they don't say Andrew Garcia was tasing people in the jail. They say a Bexar County Sheriff's deputy was tasing people. He's besmirched the badge of the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. This is supposed to be a controlled environment, and he added chaos to an already chaotic environment. By doing this in front of the inmates, it put not only him in jeopardy and the cadets, but also the other inmates. And it is his sole job in the jail to maintain the health and safety of the inmates who are there. When he was confronted about it, he put on a government record that he does not recall this ever happening. However, in the PSI, he says the reason he did it is because it was done to him. The old saying, if all your friends jump off of a bridge, are you going to do it too? And here it seems like he just went along with it and was tasing all these cadets.
The poor cadet who was multiple times spoke to investigators, or else this unlawful practice might have continued even longer.
The defendant is 6'10", 245 pounds, at least at the time when he was working there. One of the victims is 5'2" and 112 pounds. And he reported that he was held up against the wall physically, and that this defendant would not set him down, that he would put him into an arm bar in front of other inmates and tase him multiple times in front of other inmates. This was not a one-off time, Judge. If it was, I don't think the state would be having such an issue with deferred. It's the fact that we found out that this happened to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 individuals, and the one individual he didn't tase, he would harass. So when he would go to start doing his checks on the inmates, this defendant would point the red dot at him, come up behind him and clack the taser while the cadet was just trying to do his job. Therefore, the state thinks that this defendant should carry a conviction because of the egregiousness and because he has besmirched the badge of the Bexar County Sheriff's Office.
Defense.
It seemed the bully enjoyed harassing and attacking those innocent young cadets. Shortly after, his attorney had the floor, and the corrupt deputy tried his best to play the victim card.
What you're accused of by tasing and harassing these cadets is not a proper work environment or training environment for them?
100%.
Okay. Have you learned from this not to do something like that?
100%, yes.
Okay. Were you ever tased? Yes or no?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And is it part of training that everybody's going to get tased sooner or later? Is there normally a time when they get tased?
At a time and a place, yes.
Okay. And did you notice anything from the inmates reacting to your alleged misconduct?
Anton, I do not recall tasing in front of inmates.
All right. So, and this is your first offense,
Yes, sir.
correct? Okay.
No.
This is a first-time offender. I do understand what I did was, wrong. I would not do it again. It's a mistake. I'm about to get married here in the next couple of weeks. I asked for, if you could on deferred, I would greatly appreciate it. Have them a lesson, Your Honor. And I would never, ever do anything like this again.
Any questions?
Any questions from the state?
Just a few questions. So your attorney asked you, you know that that's not a proper work environment, stuff to do in the work environment, correct? But you understand this is more than just some type of workplace harassment, that was criminal conduct you were doing?
Yes.
Where you were housing people who have allegedly committed crimes?
Correct.
So in fact, you were committing crimes in the jail?
Correct.
No further questions, Judge.
Nothing else, John.
All right.
After the defense and state presented their arguments, Judge Boyd took charge and announced the sentence. But before that, she took this bully to the cleaners.
We are actually going to marriage license to pick up the proper documents, and then whenever, I guess, they have their scheduling, we'll pick a date, but as soon as possible.
All right. The state is asking for you to have a conviction. If this were counts 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7, I would probably have no question about giving you a conviction. But however, you do need to be punished. And punished is not just permanent surrender of your TCO license. So I'm going to give you a choice. I will give you 4 years deferred adjudication. With that, you're going into custody to the Bexar County Jail for 30 days. That's your punishment. Or I will give you a conviction. Which do you choose?
And the conviction, are you just giving regular probation? Is that what you're saying,
Yes.
Your Honor?
Deputy Garcia was a lying coward. The only reason he didn't want to go to the same jail he worked at was because he couldn't face the cadets he was bullying for fun.
Only one that works within my family. My wife is focused on her degree. And it's, I don't want to be in jail, Your Honor.
Well, the people you tased, they just wanted to, I'm assuming they were there to support their families as well. So why were you tasing people? And I don't want to hear, because how old are you?
24.
24. I don't want to hear this is like college and people are hazing people. I never understood why people who had been hazed decide to haze other people. So why were you tasing people at the jail who are just there? And I know those cadets are young because I've seen some of them. They're 18. Some of them look as though they're 12. So why were you tasing cadets?
Your Honor, doesn't make it right. It's a thing that's going around.
Oh, you're saying there are other cadets there are other people at the name.
Deputy Garcia tried to cover up by claiming it was a long-standing practice. The judge cut him off and went over to humble him for the next few minutes, leaving him speechless.
Who are tasing people at the jail.
Off the top of my head, Your Honor, it's been a while. I don't.
No, I'm thinking, who tased you? Give me a name. I'm sure the state would like to know these names. So who are the names of the people who were tasing you?
Your Honor, I do not remember.
Of course, you always remember the first person who tased you.
The first person who tased me was in proper training.
Oh, what's their name?
That was...
All of the complainants in this case remember you as tasing them. That's why you're here. So who tased you?
In proper training, it was Deputy Chavez.
No. Not in training, because you were not tasing people in training. I know that sometimes, and I don't know if it's still the case, I think it's not the case, they would tase officers in training so they would know this is the voltage of the taser, this is how it feels. Much like in the military, when they release the gas, so you'll know how to wear your mask properly. No, I'm talking about who tased you improperly, because that's why we're here. You're saying people hazed you, so you're just hazing people. So who are these people who tased you when you were not in training?
Your Honor, I do not remember names.
All right, so who else is tasing people at the jail?
Garcia tried to dodge the question, but didn't realize he was up against a brilliant judge who wouldn't let him off so easily.
Because that's what you're telling people. You're telling me, you're telling the states, you're telling the attorney that there's tasing happening at the jail. I'm sure those cadets don't want to be tased if it's not in training. So who are these other people who are tasing cadets? We want to know. So tell me who they are. Do you need to sit in the box while you think of the names of the people?
Mr. Randall.
The reason why are you not intentionally not remembering names, correct?
No, I cannot remember.
Oh, I mean, if you want to sit in the box and think about the names, because you can't just throw around people are being tased at the jail by other people and then that's it. Who are these people who are tasing people? There's nothing worse. Well, there may be other things that are worse than people who say, well, I heard. But you're not saying I heard.
Yes, ma'am.
You're saying, oh, now you're changing it to I heard?
I haven't seen someone get tased. I've heard of stories of people getting tased, and I just ran with that.
Oh, so he's never seen anybody tased. So now he's not just continuing the hazing that happened to him. He was just tasing people. Your unborn child, is this going to be a girl or a boy?
He's born 4 months old. He's a boy, yes, ma'am.
The deputy continued making a joke of himself, left with no answers. The pathetic bully never considered his actions wrong, and the judge kept pressing on his vague excuses.
He's born 4 months old. He's a boy, yes, ma'am.
4 months old. So what if he decides to be a cadet at the jail and somebody like you, who's 6'10", however much you weigh, is tasing him?
I would be unhappy with that.
Mm-hmm. How unhappy would you be?
Very unhappy. Very unhappy.
And how would you think the work environment would be for your son when they're constantly worried about some guy who's bigger than them tase them?
As a parent, I would not approve of that work environment, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm. That's what you did. Some people would call it being a bully, but that's what you did.
Yes, ma'am.
So you deserve a conviction, and I'm going to give you a conviction. Is there anything else from either party? In the state jail facility, suspended and probated for 4 years. Proof of employment within 30 days. There's to be no employment as a home health care provider or with minors. Regular reporting. Oh, and if I haven't said it before, I'm finding you guilty. There's to be regular reporting by Zoom or in person. There's to be regular UAs. There's to be the permanent surrender of your TCOL license. And I know sometimes people will give up their TCOL license, but then they go to another state and they're allowed to become officers again. So while you're on this probation, there's to be no employment as a security officer.
In my opinion, the deputy was lucky not to get a jail sentence. His punishment felt like a slap on the wrist, but the judge made sure to humble him one last time.
Court is not waiving any of those hours, and I'm going to require parenting classes. Probation, is there anything else? Is there anything else you need from the court to be successful?
Want the judge give you anything, help you at all? This is your time to ask.
Sir, is there anything else you need from the court to be successful on this probation?
No, no.
All right. I'm showing you what's entitled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Rights to Appeal. Did you review that with your attorney? Did you understand it, and did you sign it? We can go off the record. I understand why you don't want to do your time at the Bexar County Jail. And you know what? I know it has to do with people in the box and security for you at the Bexar County Jail. So that heavy beating of your heart, that's the heavy beating that all of those cadets had whenever you were on shift. And you need to remember that. Do you understand?
Sure.
All right, good luck to you. Yes.
I apologize for field visits.
Yes, field visits once a month for 3 months. All right, just have a seat. They'll go over conditions with you. With your attorney, did you understand it, and did you sign it? All right, we can go off the record. I understand why you don't want to do your time at the Bexar County Jail. And you know what? I know it has to do with people in the box and security for you at the Bexar County Jail. So that heavy beating of your heart, that's the heavy beating that all of those cadets had whenever you were on shift. And you need to remember that. Do you understand?
Sure.
All right, good luck to you. Yes.
I apologize. You want to fill this in?
Yes.
Garcia was immediately fired from the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. And although he wasn't arrested, he will never get to be a law enforcement officer again, thanks to Judge Boyd. Well, this isn't the last time a judge destroyed an officer in court, as this case will leave you stunned.
At least give me the satisfaction of knowing that you're out there beating up nigga. LOL. How humiliating and degrading. Be a positive example to Officer Zelenuski.
On January 28, 2015, Inkster police officer William Mendez and his partner John pulled over a black man for a traffic violation. What followed will shock you as Judge Vonda Evans details the incident during the trial.
I'm gonna start out with Mr. Dent. The victim involved in this tragedy is a 58-year-old black man who was driving his Cadillac in Inkster, a suburb of Detroit. On the evening of January 28, 2015, where his life changed forever, he was stopped by the defendant, a then Inkster police officer, and his partner, Officer Zelenuski. Mr. Dent was stopped for a minor traffic offense and ordered out of his vehicle. With his hands extended out of his driver's window, he was grabbed out, thrown to the ground, and struck 16 times in the head by the defendant. In his attempt to arrest him, he was thrown onto a window shield of a patrol car, bleeding profusely from a head injury. The responding police officers arrived as the defendant is wrestling the defendant to the ground. Mr. Dent was struck, kicked, and tased while on the ground by what appeared to be a group of angry, anxious police officers that celebrated after the defendant was beaten and cuffed.
This horrible beating had left Dent's face and shirt drenched in blood, but the officer's reaction to this was even worse.
The video in the car shows the police officers fist bumping as a celebratory act of bravery by the defendant and his cohorts. But the one image that struck out to the court was looking at Mr. Dent in his cell, shaking his head. In disbelief of what had occurred to him. If his conduct was indicative of what he was thinking, I would have thought this. What crime did I commit? Being a black man in a Cadillac, stopped for a minor traffic offense by a group of racist police officers looking at. As police officer John Zelenuski, auxiliary police officer, testified in court too, in his response to a text, was quoted as saying, "At least give me the satisfaction of knowing that you're out there beating up right now. LOL. How humiliating and degrading that must have been."
After his arrest, the officers kept on humiliating, cleaned his blood off their uniforms with disinfectant. Dent was also charged with resisting arrest and drug action. The judge was devastated by the events and delivered a powerful, heartfelt lecture.
He was left in a cell for a number of hours before getting medical treatment. But after hearing the defendant and his fellow officers joke about his injuries as they were wiping blood off their uniforms with disinfectant. 2015. Please be quiet in my courtroom. How does this happen? I'm gonna tell you how it happened. Some years ago, 19 to be, well, 25 to be exact. I remember coming into this building with such enthusiasm, so excited. And I remember a lawyer telling me that nobody leaves out of this building like they came in. I didn't understand what that meant. You go to social events, you tell people what you do for a living, and after they say, what kind of cases do you hear? And as a judge, prosecution, defense, does criminal defense, a police officer, after a while they say, we don't want to know anymore. That's the job in the criminal justice system.
Racist Officer William could only sit and listen as the judge spoke. How fitting that he was being humbled by an African-American woman.
These pressures and expectations force officers who have a pure desire to purely serve the community as an occupation to conform to this group mentally or face being ostracized and labeled as an outcast among that group. These methods of indoctrination are passed along to new police recruits in the academy by stressing the importance of obedience to authority through a structure of shame and honor. It teaches them to conform and obey to the prevailing standards of the police culture. Field training, the recruit gets a reality check of what it's like to be out in the city. I was out at a mall yesterday. I asked a woman a question. I said, you don't have to answer. How much do you get paid an hour? She said, $15 with benefits. Well, guess what? That's more than what Inkster gets. They don't get benefits. The equipment, the police cars are old. We went out to the scene. Early in the morning, there were people who were using drugs. They just kind of came out. And the only thing I could imagine was the only thing that is separating these people from drugs are the police officers that appeared in my court.
Judge Vonda not only blasted the officer in question, but also questioned the overall system that produces such cops. On the other hand, all charges against Dent were dropped, and he settled with the city for $1.4 million.
According to Law Enforcement Today, a publication, police officers had the highest rate of alcoholism, divorce, drug abuse, suicide. Their life expectancy is 10 years less than the average American. Police are human beings too. They feel despair and they have ups and downs. Their job is made worse because they see on a daily basis, more than any other occupation, the worst behavior that people can inflict on one another. They go to work every day with the knowledge that some of the people that they are sworn to protect and serve want to kill them. But how do we as a community expect superior services from police officers who are making security guard salaries to receiving little compensation and struggling just to pay health care? We would rather save a few dollars to balance a budget than pay millions of dollars to reverse a tragedy that we could have prevented. I know that Mr. Dent would give back every dime of his $1 million settlement to go back to where he was in his life before January 28th. I wonder what would one half of that $1.4 million settlement awarded to Mr. Dent have done for the Inkster Police Department. Training officers that wanted to serve and not hiring officers that didn't belong. It's my belief that when we begin to value and properly compensate and train those that want to serve, then and only then will we as a community receive the type of services that we expect and demand from the defenders of our community, the police. It's amazing how poor cities like Flint can find millions of dollars to attempt to reverse a situation that $100 a day could and would have prevented.
Finally, Judge Vonda wrapped up the proceedings before sentencing the officer. Williams was ultimately sentenced to 13 months to 10 years in jail. The chief of police also deemed his actions unnecessary, and he was fired from the police department. Well, that brings us to the end of this video. Today we saw cases where police officers were owned and humbled in courts. Typically, we do not get to see cops being held accountable for their crimes, but it does seem like a breath of fresh air whenever we see a tyrant getting owned and removed from the force. If you agree with me, please consider showing your support by liking this video, and make sure to subscribe to stay informed about future cases like. Also, if you enjoyed this video, check out the next video here.